California's gold is seen statewide on California Public Television. This series is endorsed by the California Teachers Association, the California School Boards Association, and the California Library Association.
California's Gold is brought to you by Ford, with a world of new ideas that make being out on the road more fun and more economical. Like Sync, the hands-free communication and entertainment system from Microsoft. It lets you order up practically anything you want to hear just by asking. And turn-by-turn navigation gets you exactly where you want to go. Ford hopes you enjoy traveling through California with Huell Hauser, perhaps in one of our remarkable new products.
God bless America, land that I love.
I love big flags. There's just something about them waving in the breeze. Makes me feel good. Well, this is going to be a feel-good adventure. But on this adventure, we're not looking for big flags. We're looking for big flagpoles. Poles that are not only big, but historic. And fine examples of California's gold.
My home, sweet home.
Now, the first stop on our flagpole adventure was in Northern California, in the nice community of Livermore. A community that we quickly discovered was not only very proud of its history, but its flagpoles. Okay, our flagpole adventure begins. And to start things off, we've come to Livermore, this nice little community about 50 miles east of San Francisco. We're in Alameda County. We have found the flagpole, and we've hooked up with the flagpole guy. Jeff, introduce yourself to everybody.
Hi, I'm Jeff Caskey, and I'm the president of the Livermore Heritage Guild.
And you know your flagpole, Livermore flagpole history.
I know this flagpole, that's right.
All right, this flagpole. Tell us the story of this flagpole.
Well, back in the early 1900s, Livermore was a growing town, and one of the things that a growing town has is town pride. And they said that, gosh, one of the ways we want to show that is to have a flagpole downtown, a place that people can assemble, a place that people will recognize as an important spot.
How did they get the flagpole? Wasn't there a lot of, they were taking collections, the kids were putting in their pennies and nickels?
All the city was interested. So there was a series of baseball games where the foresters and the native sons and daughters of the American West raised money. They charged ticket prices to help raise money, and there were dinners. There were all kinds of events to raise money for that flagpole.
So they got the money raised.
They got the money raised.
And they got the flagpole, and it was a big flagpole. How big was this flagpole?
This flagpole was 126 feet, which was a bit of a surprise for the people who were originally talking about a 30-footer.
And you told me that you recently did a little bit of research because you got curious, where in the world would they go find a 126-foot flagpole?
So, well, it turns out that we are just east of San Francisco Bay. And in 1905 in San Francisco Bay, shipbuilders were building steamers and still building tall sailing ships. So they went down to W.A. Boyle & Son, a shipbuilder in San Francisco and Oakland, and bought themselves a ship's mast.
And used it as a flagpole.
Used it as a flagpole.
Okay, so the big flagpole went up here in Livermore right here in 1905.
In 1905, that's right. On September 5th, they got it in place. And on Admissions Day, September 9th, they raised the flag for the first time and dedicated the flagpole.
Right here?
Well, not quite right here.
Well, where was it raised?
So it was raised in the center of town. They said they wanted it at the crossroads of town, so it's at the intersection of our 1st Street and Livermore Avenue, right where everybody would want to be when you assembled for an event around the flagpole.
So this isn't where it was originally placed in 1905.
No, it's not.
And this isn't, I'm not big on heights, but this doesn't look like it's 126 feet tall to me. So there's something there's more to this story.
Something missing, isn't there? This flagpole is not quite the 126 feet because the 126-foot pole was first moved actually in 1959.
Why was it moved?
Well, when I said they put it in the middle of the street, they really put it in the middle of the street. And they put it there when it was horses and carriages and people weren't worried about running into it. But by the 50s, people were hitting it with cars and it was a real traffic obstruction. So they moved it.
Here.
No, not quite yet. Not quite yet.
Boy, this is the most complicated flagpole story I've ever heard.
This
they didn't
flagpole
move it
gets
here.
around.
Where did they move it?
So they moved it about 20 feet south, just to get it out of the middle of the road. They still wanted it in the middle of the or in the area of the intersection, and they like to have events there. Anybody in Livermore will tell you how to get someplace by, well, you go to the flagpole and you go this way.
Well, was it still 126 feet tall?
They chopped a little off the bottom. They took about 14 feet off the bottom.
So now it was 115 feet tall and about 20 feet from where it originally had been placed.
About that, that's right.
That
was in 1959.
Okay, now what happened to it next? Because there's obviously another chapter.
That's right. Well, it was there for a long time, and by now that flagpole was getting pretty old. In fact, it was almost 100 years old, and the city fathers began to look up and notice a lot of cracks going up and down it, and they were worried that one good stiff breeze, and that could come down and take out a building or a body or whatever. And so they decided that the pole needed to come down. It was unsafe.
So they moved it for it had its third location. And in that move, it got substantially shorter.
Well, they weren't even planning to put it back up, and they got it down, and they said, the top half doesn't look so bad. And so they put the top two pieces together, made themselves a 60-foot pole, and brought it over here to Carnegie Park, and planted it right here as a memorial flagpole.
So this is part of the original 1905 flagpole from the mast of a ship, moved to the third location and cut down by at least half.
Yeah, a little bit more than half, but the big ball on top is still the original gilded ball that was up there. That certainly will tell you why it looks quite so substantial. It started out as a substantial mast, and it's still a good-sized chunk of pole there. So,
well, you know what? It still makes a statement.
We like it here.
I bet you that historians love the fact that instead of it just being taken down and destroyed, it was saved and put up here by, this looks like an old Carnegie Library.
This is exactly an old Carnegie Library.
Which is now?
Well, it's right now partly our offices and also the offices and the gallery for the Livermore Art Association.
So there's history right here in this part of Livermore.
We're standing in it.
And under normal circumstances, you would think this was the end of the Livermore flagpole story. But when you're in Livermore, and you're talking about flagpoles, the story just keeps on going. So we are leaving this flagpole right now and taking a look at another chapter in the history of this flagpole with the original ball still on the top. Here we go. Now it gets exciting. We have left downtown historic Livermore. We've come about 5 miles to the nice little community of Pleasanton, and we've come to the senior center here and hooked up with 2 members of the Tri-Valley chapter of the California Woodcarvers Guild. And they're hard at work, but fellas, take a break from your work for just a minute, cut off your machine, put away your knives. Come over here because this is really exciting. Tell everybody, come on over here, fellas, what this is all about, Ken.
Well, we had some wood left over, obviously. We talked about 60 feet of that flagpole getting planted in Carnegie Park, and the rest of the wood was simply in our storage, waiting for a good idea to do something with it.
So you had 30 or 40 feet of the original flagpole just laying around waiting for something to happen to it.
That's exactly right.
And that's where these guys and some of their compadres came in. Fellas, tell everybody what has happened to some of that, and let's take a look right over here. There's part of the original pole right there, and boy, that's a big, thick piece of historic flagpole Livermore wood. What did you all decide to do with that old wood?
Well, we decided that we would make a lot of projects that could be put together to give the public an opportunity to get a piece of the old flagpole. That's what the whole thing is about. So what we did is we just used our intuition to try to get the different parts and stuff like that. So we have hummingbirds and we have small bookmarks and ducks.
Your
and
members made this out of the old wood.
That's
they
correct.
Carved it out of the wood.
That's correct. Yes, we carved that all out of the wood.
You carved this out of a big piece of wood right here.
Yes, we did.
Boy, that's a big duck.
Yeah.
That's a big piece of history right there.
Yeah.
But you've got a little bit of everything here. How did you decide what to make?
Each of our members has something that they like to make, and basically when we said there's wood available, they all let their imaginations run wild, and away they went.
So everything on this table is from the old flagpole wood.
That's correct.
Yes, it is.
How does that make you feel? This is kind of an interesting project,
It's a
isn't it?
very interesting project. You always think about when you're working with a big piece of wood like that, that thing has been sitting in there for 99 years or so, and it's been up there, and people have put little staples and stuff in it to put their little things, and you have to go work around all those staples and everything else to make sure you don't wreck your equipment or your knives, that kind of thing. And of course, you pay attention to the grain, depending on what you want to do, to get the effect for the part, for the piece.
So
There's always lots of surprises. This is actually the original crack where a nail was driven or the cleat was there. And rather than cover it up and hide it, we actually...
well, no, that's part of history.
That's exactly right.
And the point is, when they get your work, it's a reminder of the history of the old flagpole and old Livermore.
And something that they can take home and have it in their very own house.
Wow, congratulations, fellas. Boy, this is it. Juxtaposition. Here are the guys, and there are others who worked on it as well. Here's what they did, and here's what they did it from right here. This is the old flagpole right here, part of it. Okay, so we've looked at what's left of the original old 1905 Livermore flagpole, and we have seen firsthand what is being made, what's being carved out of part of the wood from that old flagpole. Now, as we end up our story, we've come back downtown Livermore, and Jeff, there's another flagpole.
We like this location for a flagpole.
What's the deal on this flagpole?
This is right back in the center of downtown where a flagpole ought to be standing. And so after the old one came down because it was unsafe, they said, but we still need to have a flagpole here. So this was erected and rededicated 100 years after the first one had been put in.
So this is this isn't made out of wood.
This is a fiberglass pole, and we'll see if it can last as long as the old wood one
Is it
did.
as tall as the original one?
The original one was actually sitting in the ground by about 10 feet, which makes these two almost identical in height.
And is it in the same location as the first flagpole?
It's pretty darn close, within a foot or two.
A flagpole has anchored this site since 1905. On July the 4th, 2005, the citizens of this community dedicated a new flagpole. 60 feet of the original flagpole stands in nearby Carnegie Park. Both symbolize the strength of our nation and its people. Commemorated by the city of Livermore, May 2008. So things change, but not that much as far as flagpoles go in Livermore.
That's absolutely right.
And what's really interesting, what the beautiful, poignant kicker of all this story is that you can see this flagpole from over where we started by the Carnegie Library, by what's left of the old flagpole. The two in juxtaposition are still standing and still flying flags in Livermore.
Still proudly flying the American flag here in Livermore, that's right.
They love their flag and their flagpoles here in Livermore. We have completed quest number 1 in search of historic flagpoles in California. There it is. Well, that's the new one right there here in Livermore. Next stop on our flagpole adventure took us to Southern California, way down to one of the most bizarre and I think wonderful places in our state, the Salton Sea. Now, we were heading to the southern tip of the Salton Sea to the nice little community of Calipatria. They have a tall, historic flagpole as well, and their flagpole has an inspirational story. Okay, we have arrived at the location of our second historic flagpole here in California. We're in Calipatria, California, located down here in Imperial County, right by the Salton Sea in the desert. Look at that, beautiful shot, the flag flying in the breeze. Only trouble is, that's not the flag we're here to see. There's the flag right there on top of that big old tall pole. And boy, that flagpole has a great story to tell. Introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Betty Young.
You're a local, yokel around
Absolutely.
here. A desert rat.
Exactly.
Your name?
June Momita.
Nice to meet you.
Milton Momita.
You're an ex-desert rat.
An ex-desert
You
rat.
live up Northern California now.
Exactly, but you know you never get away once you're a desert rat.
Yeah, listen, we got to hurry up and do this interview because it's 115 out here, which of course means nothing to you desert rats. But for the rest of us, now it doesn't mean anything to you, does it, Chris?
No, it doesn't.
You like this?
Oh, I'm used to it.
What's your title here?
I'm the fire chief.
Okay, the fire. Boy, it's hot enough to burn right now, I'm
yeah.
telling you. All right, let's tell the story. First off, Calipatria is known affectionately and officially as the lowest down city in the Western Hemisphere. Why did it get that title?
Because we're 184 feet below sea level,
Which makes you literally not the lowest down spot,
but the lowest downtown.
the lowest downtown.
Right.
The lowest down spot is in Death Valley, down
Right.
at Badwater.
Yes,
But this is the lowest downtown spot
exactly.
in the
Yeah.
Western Hemisphere. All right, now let me see if I got the rest of the story. For years, everybody here in Calipatria, or Calipat as the locals know it, wanted to build a big flagpole, right?
Exactly.
This was kind of a dream, but it just never did come together. The people couldn't raise the money, and it was a great idea, but it never happened.
Right.
Your father and mother lived here. Your father was the local druggist.
That's correct.
And it took a tragedy to kind of jumpstart this whole process. Explain the story to us.
Well, in 1957, my mother and father were going up to Los Angeles to visit children, their daughters, myself, when they were involved in a traffic accident in Colton in a head-on, and my mother was killed, and my dad was laid up in the hospital for quite a while.
Now that galvanized Calipatria, didn't it? Because this was a friendly city.
Exactly, and the next thing we know, Mayor Rademacher and some of the councilmen came up to the hospital and asked my dad for the keys to the drugstore, since it was the only drugstore in town. And they said, give us the keys, Harry. We'll go ahead and make sure that the store stays open. We'll get a pharmacist from Raleigh to come up to fill the prescriptions. And in that way, the whole town kept the drugstore going.
Okay, now how did that tie in to the flagpole?
Well, as Betty said, the town always wanted to have the American flag fly at sea level, which is 184 feet. And at that time, a committee, actually years before, a committee was formed to kind of raise the money. But it took a while for that to happen. And because of the accident, because of the notoriety in the news of the town helping my dad, his story was picked up nationwide and led to Ralph Edwards saying, well, maybe that would make a good story to show how Americanism is in this country.
This was on This Is Your Life, the
Exactly.
television series that Ralph Edwards hosted. Your
Yeah.
father was on that show.
Exactly, right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Takeo Harry Momita of Calipatria, California. You're going to meet a wonderful man here. You've watched the program. You know where they sit. You say you watch every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
Now, before we talk about the past, let's chat about now. Where is Calipatria, the town where you have your drugstore, Harry?
Well, Calipatria is about 200 miles south of Los Angeles on the extreme lower end of Salton Sea and
Salton Sea.
Salton Sea.
How large a place
in
is
Imperial County?
Imperial County. How large a place is Calipatria?
The population is exactly, last census showed 2,463.
62 till you get back to town. Is that?
That's right.
What claim to special distinction does Calipatria make, Harry?
Well, we have, besides being a very friendly town where every one of us are known to each other by our first names, ever since we moved down there, no one hardly called us Mr. Momita or Mrs. Momita. We're known affectionately as Helen and Harry. And besides that, we do have the distinction of being the lowest down incorporated city in the Western Hemisphere, 184 feet below sea level.
Oh, that's what you mean. That's Calipatria, the town where you now live, among friendly neighbors, as you say, and where your drugstore is a gathering place for friends and the hub of community activity.
This kind of galvanized the nation. It also galvanized the town, didn't it?
Exactly. And remember, they had been in the internment camp during World War II. So we appreciated them, and they appreciated our community.
And what happened? How did the community start to raise all this money?
The mayor, Eddie Rademacher, had the idea, enlisted me and 2 or 3 others, and we started issuing certificates.
Did you sell by the inch?
Exactly.
And did you raise enough money?
We thought we were doing well, but the price kept going up.
Well, it's a tall flagpole, but your dad got $1,000 from Ralph Edwards for being on the show.
That's correct.
And he contributed all of that.
Plus another $500 of his own money.
Wow, so that kind of helped put it over the top.
Well, that helped get it going quite a ways.
But
it still needed more money.
The story was, let's cut to the chase, the town finally came up with the money, right?
Exactly. Everybody came together. The community always did things like that.
Okay, and the flagpole was built. And I was going to build this thing up for big suspense, but you kind of gave it away. How tall was the flagpole? How tall is that flagpole?
184 feet.
Which is exactly how far below sea level this town is.
Right.
So it's a 184-foot tall flagpole.
Yes.
And what was the deal? That the flag was to be flying at exactly 184 feet?
That's correct. The town always wanted the flag, the American flag, to fly at sea level.
So, boy, that really gives an idea of how far below sea level we are. Exactly. You all really are the lowest downtown in the Western Hemisphere.
Tell us about it.
Now, is the flagpole named after your mom and dad?
They wanted to name it after my mother initially, but he said my mother was not that kind of person that wanted some personal notoriety. And he said, let's dedicate it to good neighborliness. And that's what that's how the flag was dedicated.
So when the flag was dedicated, it was dedicated to the good neighborness of the people of Calipatria.
Exactly.
Wow, well, how does it feel coming back and seeing the flag and the flagpole? It's still here.
Well, it does really feel good because it is something that this town is very, very proud of. And our family is very proud to have been able to participate in it. And it just feels good.
You know, this is a great story. The problem is, I don't think most people driving through town today know this story, do they?
I think some people in the town don't know it.
Yeah. So it's this wonderful California story about people pulling together and making something happen.
Right.
But to most people like me, just driving up and down by the Salton Sea on Highway 111, if we see it at all, we just say, oh, wow, look at that big old flagpole.
Yes, we're very proud of it.
How do the old timers feel about it?
Well, those who are left are it's a treasure of the town and the community.
The sea level flagpole, 184 feet, dedicated to good neighborliness. A saga of the people of Calipatria and Harry and Helen Momita, proclaiming kindliness and the rights of individuals. Built by donations from people with faith and dreams under the dedicated guidance of Mayor Edward H. Rademacher and Councilman Franklin Garrett, erected in 1958 and dedicated to all people of goodwill.
For 2 full weeks while you're mending, Harry, your neighbors run your store for you, and for Helen's funeral, the townspeople contribute nearly $500 for flowers. Mayor Rademacher, come out here and tell us, will you, what did Harry do with the money?
When we brought Harry the money, he looked at me and he said, "Sure, Helen always did love flowers. But," he said, "for years we've dreamt of a flagpole 184 feet high to fly above Calipatria." And he thought Helen would want us to build that flagpole with that money.
It brought out the very best of the people here in Calipatria.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really did, and they all pitched in. And without them, it would never have gotten done.
You know what? I guarantee you that any flagpole anywhere else in the world isn't going to have as good a story connected with it as this does, don't you think?
I certainly agree with you 100% there.
Don't you think?
Yes, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thank the people of Calipatria who came together back in the late 50s and built this flagpole, put up this flagpole, which has been standing here proudly ever since as a tribute to good neighbors here in Calipatria. This is what California's gold is all about. You know, most of the time, flags get all the attention, and that's as it should be. But as we've discovered on this adventure, many times flagpoles have stories as well. Rich and wonderful stories that are very much a part of California's gold. Well, hello everybody, I'm Huell Hauser, and I sure hope you've enjoyed this flagpole adventure. Be on the lookout, there are flags and flagpoles all over our state. And if you'd like to go on this particular flagpole adventure again, share it with family or friends, or more importantly, donate a copy to your local school or library. Well, it's available on DVD. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727, and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.
Ford and the Ford dealers are proud to have brought you California's Gold. Discover the new ideas we're developing to make being out on the road more enjoyable and more economical. Like EcoBoost, the turbocharged engine technology that gives you the power of a larger engine with surprising gas mileage. Ford is committed to making your traveling fun, economical, and environmentally responsible.